Hello, my name's Steve Clues and I'd like to welcome you to our channel, Shadow Healers. And in this video I want to talk a little bit about what shadow healing is and what we do ourselves. Well, first of all, this video isn't going to be about me talking about mental health issues or physical issues. I'm going to be doing a video very shortly and it's a challenge which has been set out there, and its primary focus is on men talking about mental health issues or the awareness of mental health problems and issues that men face. And it's a fantastic challenge itself. Please look up on YouTube Hayes Outdoors, and I'll put a link in the description. But in that, I'm going to be talking about my own mental health problems which I've gone through, which I've experienced, so on and so forth. And basically it involves getting outdoors, cooking a steak outdoors on a fire in the wilderness or whatever, and just talking about mental health issues, which I think is really good. And the challenge is a fantastic idea, and I hope a lot of people get encouraged by that. So even if you don't like this particular video I'm doing now, please nip across to Hayes Outdoors, see what's going on, or just type it on YouTube, show us your steak challenge, and you'll get a lot of videos coming up with some great people. Some great YouTubers have been involved with this, and it's going viral. So also, please subscribe to this channel and hit the little bell so you can get notifications, because within the next 2 weeks, of which you have to do this within 2 weeks, of finding out about the challenge, that you've got to get it done, because everybody wants to keep this rolling and stuff like that. So it's really good. And obviously, if anybody before I do that video wants to join me on it, then please let me know. As Shadow Healers, we're a small group. We're hoping to turn into an organisation later on. We're there really to help people, support people, and help people with the healing process. So this video, although the challenge itself is mainly focused on males, although anybody can be in it, male and female, young or old, it doesn't matter, it's all the same sort of concept. This video is aimed more at a general audience. Now, I am a shadow healer. I'm also a certified completion process practitioner, and that was a process that I engaged in. It's delivered by Teal Swan, and she was very supportive, especially for me, because I'm ex-armed forces, I'm a veteran, and I had some quite severe mental health problems over the last few years, more significantly than any other time, especially with things like PTSD. It was a big learning curve for me, and I took advantage of the situation, and I'm actually a certified practitioner today. And I did run an organisation for a while which was all to do with veterans' mental health, and guys who are out there who are ex-armed forces, and women of course, who were suffering with PTSD. But one of the things I learned, and one of the things I found, was very often when we're suffering any form of sort of depression, we're suffering anxiety, stress or worry, it's easy to blame it on the triggers which cause it. And as I found, as I've helped a lot of guys and supported a lot of guys who are now in a better place, suffering from PTSD, you tend to find that military service has just been a trigger for PTSD, the anxiety and the depression. And so in a lot of cases, and it is a very real trigger, don't get me wrong, but what is beyond the background with things like PTSD, there's other things lying at the core of it. It predisposes you to be more vulnerable, so that you do suffer, unfortunately, from things like PTSD later on in life. I mean, after all, if you take a group of lads in the army, a small section or whatever, and something happens, and one of the lads, gets wounded, gets killed or whatever else, then other people are with them. One person might suffer with PTSD, and the other, say, 3 or 4 guys who are with them don't suffer from it. And it's certainly not a weakness suffering from it. And this is one of the main things about the challenge, which I'm going to be doing in Show Your State Challenge. It's because really, as men, but it also applies to women just as much, we live in a very sort of conditioned reality. And a lot of what we do doesn't balance with us very, very well. And this starts at a very, very early age in life. And it's conditioning, it's social etiquette, it's political correctness. You know, we've always got to watch what we're doing, be mindful of what we're saying, because somebody could be easily offended by it. And we're actually taught to think different ways. And this is all called conditioning. And yes, you know, we do have to live in social environments. We have to be considerate and appropriate in the way we act with other people, so we don't offend them or anything else. But really, we're being told by the system how you should think. Obviously, how you project yourself, yeah, it does need to be, you know, in terms of society, appropriate or whatever else. But we get into this way of thinking that, you know, all these people, all these, let's say, do-gooders, for want of a better name, all know what's better for us. They all tell us how we should think, what we should think, how we should do stuff. And this starts at a very early age. And it starts really with our parents, because very often our parents will want what's best for us. You know, parents have ideas. Your parents may not have been in very good jobs, and they don't want you to do that job or have to do that sort of thing. When you're older, so they push, you know, down all the paths, down all the routes. But that seems like a good thing. And, you know, behind the scenes, that looks and sounds good. Yeah, of course you want the best for your kids. But what happens if, as a child, and as you grow up to become an adult, actually you don't want to do that? You know, your parents, your school teachers, your education system, society, all projects what you should be. They sort of say to you, you know, we want you to be this and we want you to be that. And that's really not the right way, because, you know, that child may not want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a solicitor, or any other sort of big money-earning profession. They might be just as happy serving food through a window, you know, at a drive-through somewhere. They say in life the happiest people in the world come home covered in muck. And, you know, there's a lot of truth behind that. And so we tend to get very much conditioned. Now, in terms of, you know, when I was talking about the challenges and stuff like that, we have seen a big increase in a lot of celebrities coming forward and talking about their own mental health issues, which I think, again, is fantastic. But there's a bit of a disconnection there between the average day person and celebrities, because a lot of what drives people to frustration, anxiety, depression, and unfortunately taking their own lives are more common day things such as debt, financial problems, just being able to provide for the family. And people tend to think, you know, they're failing to do this because of the system we live in. It doesn't make it easy. You know, and when people look at celebrities and talking about mental health, yes, a lot of them do have very genuine mental health, and I think it's fantastic they stand up and talk about it. But there's a bit of a disconnection between the average day person like myself and celebrities, because a lot of us average day people do get triggered by debt and stuff like that, and other stresses, and having to work too hard. I'm not saying celebrities don't have to work hard, but, you know, you look at it, they've usually got millions of pounds or tens of thousands of pounds sat in the bank account. And so, you know, we look at it as an average day person, say, well, you know, you've got all the money you need to go and get things sorted out. Why don't you? And so it does form a bit of a disconnect. So that's why I like the challenge, which I'm going to be doing, which is, you know, all about average guys like myself just going out there and talking about various things. And that's where I'll be talking about my own mental health problems I've gone through and explaining it. But the thing is, with mental health, it always stems from something, and very often we find these somethings, these core issues are buried deep in our past. And even though the presenting problem, and I've had a lot of people who've come to me where I've done the process with them and we've gone through it, 9 times out of 10 what they think the actual problem is only really the tip of the iceberg, because there's something behind the scenes which is driving it. And what we tend to do, and it's not just men, women do this as well, but it tends to be a lot more with males, is we put on an act. We don't like to talk about mental health because it's not macho, it's not big. I mean, I served 15 years in the armed forces, I've been a close protection officer, I've worked the doors and everything else. And I'm not saying that to be big-headed, but I'm saying it because the reality is, a lot of what I did, yes, I have to put an act on. You know, being in the armed forces, to not show emotion to certain situations and stuff like that. You know, working on the doors, there was times when we did have issues, we did have problems, and it's kicking off or whatever. And yes, I was scared, but you can't show those emotions. And just relating back to what I was mentioning about celebrities, if you look at one celebrity, for example, Robin Williams, a fantastic actor and comedian, and it was a big shock when this guy took his own life. But when you looked at Robin Williams on the big screen or on your TV, watched the movie, you'd think, you know, hey, look at this guy, he's really happy, he's funny, he must have a great life, and I'd love to be like him, you know, and have that sort of attitude to life. But the thing is, he was an actor, and what he projected out was very different to what he was below the surface, where he was suffering with severe depression and anxiety, which unfortunately led him to taking his own life. Now, the system which we have at the moment, unfortunately, in the UK is probably not the best, and I'm saying that through personal experience. We seem to have a very retarded sort of approach to mental health, and the mental health system is not what it should be. It's very backward. As a veteran myself, I'm entitled to go and try and get help from certain organisations, and they do these big advertising campaigns, and so do like the local authorities. I live in Stoke-on-Trent, and they do these campaigns saying, here's a crisis phone number, you're in crisis, ring this number. But I found when I was having severe problems, I rung one number and they said, well, you're an ex-veteran, so these people help you. You rung them and I said, well, we can't do anything for you, ring your local health authority. And it was like a game of ping pong, backwards and forwards. And when I did finally manage to get into the system, I had a terrible time. It was very detrimental to me in many ways. And a lot of the problems are, it all becomes about funding and stuff like this. And I'm not knocking all the charities, but there's some big charities out there who say, yes, we're going to deal with mental health and we'll look after people, we'll look after the veterans. And the more people they get, the more funding they get. But the problem is they always tend then to lose the focus on what they're doing and instead focus on the funding. And unfortunately, this is the way it happens with a lot of organisations. And again, when they start attracting funding, there's certain protocols put into place whether you must do this and you must do that, and they're not always right. Having gone through the mental health system myself, being admitted to a mental health hospital, there was a massive negative impact on what they were doing to me, both the medications, certain therapies, and I'm not going to mention any names here because that would be unfair. And I was fortunate, well, I say fortunate, it was unfortunate that in one case, several times I tried, but in one particular case I went to attempt to take my life, and at the time I felt really euphoric about it, like this is it, it's going to be the end of this. And I'll talk about that more when I do my challenge. But I stopped. It was my dog which stopped me. He was pawing me at the side as I was about to do it, and it just made me stop, it made me think. And I sat down in absolute desperation. You know, I hadn't even got the ability or the control of that moment in time to end my own life. And I felt absolutely desperate. I felt alone. And out of frustration, I just went on the internet and I typed in a few keywords: depression, anxiety, how to deal with it, and I come across a woman by the name Teal Swan who does the completion process. I become friends with Teal afterwards, but that's another story. But the point being here, I watched one of her videos, and within a few minutes my whole mindset had changed. I was thinking in a slightly new way. No, I wasn't cured at the time or anything else, but it just gave me that little stepping stone I needed to start on a new path. And like I said, I did become a practitioner as a result of that. So it was very productive. And what I want to say to people out there is, look, don't be silly. You know, you might feel very, very alone. You might feel very scared. You might feel very vulnerable, and that's understandable. And that's okay to feel like that. It'd be unnatural not to feel like that. But there are people that can help, even if you've been or you're in the process of going through the mental health system and you don't seem to be getting anywhere. Look around, do your research. Now, we only operate in the sort of Stoke-on-Trent area, but we do what's called shadow workshops. And what we do is we look at the reality of things. And again, it's quite difficult for men to take this on board, but trust me when I say, you know, I've worked with a lot of veterans and it does really help them and it does work. And I won't say it's a cure. There isn't cures in some cases, but the cure is actually managing, so you can live a pretty decent, productive and happy life. That's what it's all about. And you do have options to do that, and the way we do that is we do what's called shadow work, where we look at what the problems are. But a lot of the problems we suppress, we push down, and as men or even women, we're not allowed to show that. You know, as men, we've got this big ego. We must be projecting ourselves as strong, as tough, and things like this don't bother me. And for women, you know, especially single mums or, you know, even family mums who've got young children and stuff like that, well, mum can't be seen to be depressed or down in the dumps because she's got her kids to look after. She just has to struggle through it. And we tend to suppress these emotions. But these emotions have come from somewhere. Why is it you're a little bit more vulnerable? Why is it you're more predisposed to feeling depression, anxiety compared to other people? Well, the truth is other people are probably just acting out things a little bit better. And in a lot of cases, they are suffering behind the scenes. Now with shadow work, it's as the name states, it's about shadows. Okay, from the age, or just before we're born, when we're still in the womb, up until around the age of 8 years old, we learn our emotions and what they are. And we learn the emotions on a singular basis. So we learn what makes us sad. We learn what makes us happy. We learn what may make us jealous, greedy. All these different types of emotions, anger, fear. But as we get to the age of 8, we've really learnt most of our emotional content. And so what happens is we start to move into early teens and then into adulthood. When a situation happens, we get a mixture of very basic emotions mixing together. For example, if I was a teacher at a school and I'd got a class which is average age was say 6 years old, and there'd been a terrible accident the night before. One of the young children in there had been killed, and had been killed by a drunk driver, run them over. That's a horrible thing to use as an example, I know, but let's just use that at the moment. So as a teacher, the next morning I have to go in and explain this to the children. Well, at that young age, the children's emotional response would just be that of probably sadness. Because they're going to feel sad, they're not going to see their classmate anymore, you know, especially closer friends, they're going to miss him and generally feel sad. Now let's spring forward a few years to, I've now got a class full of 15, 16-year-olds and a classmate was killed. And I go in and tell them. Well, they're not just going to feel at this point sadness. Yes, they are going to feel sadness, but that's going to also have an element of anger in. It's going to have grief in it. It's going to have guilt in it. And the emotions are going to be battling over each other as to which one needs to come through. And obviously, one of the big ones is going to be anger. You know, one of the classmates, their friends, were killed needlessly because of someone else, you know, being intoxicated when they were driving, which is absolutely stupid. And they're going to feel anger towards that. And what we're doing here is sort of creating new feelings by a mixture of emotions going in. But my point I'm making here is we still have these quite childlike emotions which, as we grow in life, are still the root causes of all the emotions we feel, the different emotions as we feel in adulthood. And different emotions attach to different things. So as we start to go through life, we're conditioning ourselves in different ways, and these emotions come through. And situations arise in our life where the emotions get confused, or we have had things which have happened in our lives, usually when we're quite young, of which the emotion is connected to, and that later becomes a trigger. So when we experience something similar in adulthood, which really we should possibly turn around and say, no, I'm just sad about this, or just deal with a single emotion, we instead maybe feel anger or fear or something like that, and that acts as a trigger to flood us with different emotions. So with shadow work, what we're doing is we take your current situation, your current status, and rather go in and talk about it in an egotistic level, because the mind works in very complex ways. And just like pain, you know, if you think back to the last time you had a really bad toothache or something, well, you don't feel the pain of the toothache. You knew it was painful, but you don't feel the pain of it. And similarly, you know, it's like if women remembered the pain of childbirth and truly remembered it, well, the chances are a lot of women would only ever have one child, but they don't. They go on to have, you know, other children. But the mind also suppresses thoughts, memories, which are bad for us, and it does it as a survival mechanism, but it doesn't mean it's not there. They're below the surface. And these can sometimes work against us. So when we get a trigger, we feel those raw emotions coming up. And those triggers involve all the senses in terms of a memory. And to the brain, in the subconscious way, it's just a warning. You know, it could be you've had a really bad past relationship or something like that, and your ex wore a certain perfume, and you could be walking down the street and suddenly smell that perfume. Subconsciously, you're not even aware of it, but all of a sudden start getting a bit of anxiety, a bit of worry or whatever else, because it was such a bad relationship. It's triggered an emotion below the surface. And things like this have to be resolved. And most of our thought process is about a survival mechanism running in our minds, giving us warnings, warning us something's not right because of past experiences. So with shadow work, what we do is we look at your current situation, but rather than going on an ego level, a communication level, just talking about it, because what happens if we do that, then the ego automatically brings up walls in front of us to prevent you from getting there to the true emotion. It doesn't want you going there. So instead what we do is we use the emotional feeling of what the problem is, and then we do a bit of a timeline regression back. So we look at it and say, well, when was the last time you felt like this? And it takes you back and you get a memory, but we then again face that feeling, and we go through that feeling, we explore the feeling, we allow it to come through, which is a big thing for a lot of people, because we suppress these fears because we don't want to feel them. But if we keep suppressing them, they're like messages. They want to come through. They want to pop up and come through and tell us, warn us. But we suppress them down using our ego. So instead, we go into them. We feel them. And that may not sound comfortable. And initially, it isn't. That's why, we are trained the way we're trained. So we can be present with you and help you go through this. But only by allowing acceptance and go into the issue. And people feel very relieved when they do it and they realise they can come out of it and actually face that. And you can do with all of these, regardless of how bad it may be, you can go into it and you can come out of the other side of it. And it feels very empowering and enlightening that I can feel this. It's okay to feel these emotions. I can go through this. And I dealt with it to a certain extent. But with shadow healing, we take it another step further. And we go back using the emotional feeling to where the actual emotion originated from. And these are usually called core beliefs. And these core beliefs we can then use and work with to change the emotional content. And remember, your raw core emotional content was really developed between the ages pre-birth to around about 8 years old. So in a sense, these raw emotions, which fuel everything else, are really, compared to you today, are quite immature. But that doesn't mean to say we can't change them. And by going into the process, we can change them. And it doesn't mean we're removing memories from you or anything else. All we're going to do is change the emotional content of that and then reintegrate that back into your life again. So now you can deal with things. And because we're dealing with the core emotion at the very base of it, it grows like tentacles coming out of it, going upwards. So where you're normally getting triggers and having these sudden feelings of doom, anxiety, and often you don't even know where they're coming from because the subconscious detected these, it does help alleviate these because now we've dealt with the core emotional content, so these triggers are put to rest. And it's a very powerful process. And the way we work is, okay, we're therapists, but really we teach you how to do this yourself because it needs to be self-empowering. You need to be able to understand the process and take the process away and use it. We just start you with the process, guide you through it so you understand it, teach you the tools of it, so that then you can take over and you can use this process for yourself. And that's self-empowering. And that's self-empowering is something like the mental health services say, oh, it's about self-empowering the patient. Well, you go to a mental health hospital and they do exactly the opposite. They often take any power, responsibility you've got away from yourself, and that leaves you in a more vulnerable situation. Well, this is not. We want to say you do have responsibility and you do have choices. And that's what I really want to get to the point of here, that we run workshops for this sort of thing. And they are self-empowering, and you have a choice at the end of the day. And we want to just be able to give you the choices. You know, yes, we hope you don't do anything silly. Of course, we don't want you to do anything silly. But at the very least, we just want to say, look, there's another door available here. Do you want to make a choice to walk through it and see what the future holds? None of us can tell what the future may hold, and who knows what's around the corner. So really, that's what the shadow work is. And you know, if you are interested, then please get in touch with us. I'm going to put the website linked. The website, links to social media accounts, and we're out there as much as we can. We're only small, we're not big, and we're hoping that, you know, people who may come forward, do the workshops, then move on, and maybe one day become practitioners yourself and help support us. And it is a great feeling when somebody comes to you and they're in a really bad place and you can help them. you can guide them in a natural way, of which then they can go out and use for themselves. It's a stepping stone. They start taking control of their life again. They start getting somewhere. And it's a great feeling knowing you've helped somebody. We're not after thanks, we're not after likes, followers or anything else, but that is a great feeling to be able to do that for people. And I'd like to think that some of you who may come to our workshops end up in the same situation where you too can go out and help other people. Yes, we do follow certain ethics and protocols, but we're not like a lot of mental health system problems where, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't say this, you can't say that, because everybody's afraid of litigation or whatever else. No, we're talking about real stuff here, and that takes human connection. So please have a look at our website, contact us, find out more about us. We try as best we can to keep our prices as low as possible, and we even like, if we can do it and we can get a sponsor, or we do get some really good sort of business people out there who want to help us, they can provide venues for us, and when we do that sort of thing, we open the workshops up for free. We're not in this to make a lot of money or anything like that. We're all about being absolutely genuine in what we do, and we just want to give people a choice. We want to give people an opportunity, and that's what it's about. So please, I'll ask you to subscribe to our channel. The next video I'm going to be doing is actually the Show Us Your State Challenge, and I'm quite open. I'll talk about my own mental health problems I've gone through, the experiences I've gone through, because it is important to talk. And I'd like to think, based on that other people will say, you know what, he said it, well, I can say it. And sometimes just talking about it is going to be a massive thing. You don't have to hide it away. It's not embarrassing. We live in a very Newtonian, Victorian system still, where mental health should be discarded. And even though people coming forward talking about it, people still aren't. Families still bury it. Oh, we shouldn't talk about this. We shouldn't mention it. Our mental health system is based on a very retarded academic system, such as our education system is. And I'm sorry if that offends certain people out there, but as I've come to realise, a lot of people who are working in the system know it's not working, it's failing, because of the rules set and the protocols set in place, and because everything's driven from an academic point of view. You've got to look who's running and who's funding the medical schools. Well, it comes from corporations, and they've got different agendas to actual real healing and other modalities. And it's like the education system. It's a very retarded academic system. I'm sorry if you're a teacher, but again, you're seeing hundreds of teachers leaving the profession because they simply cannot teach the children properly. We've given up teaching children to problem solve. They say they're teaching them to problem solve, but what they're doing is saying, well, to problem solve, when you've got this problem, you must do step 1, 2, 3 and 4. And even if the child becomes creative and comes up with a different solution, they get chastised for it. If they don't show the correct working out, even though they've got the answer right, they lose marks for it. How crazy is that? Is it because it challenges these so-called masterminds who are running, Ofsted or whatever, and putting the curriculum out there, And it does make me wonder, and I've got an old saying I go by, I wonder how many Einsteins or young Einsteins are out there, and with no disrespect to this particular job, but actually turning around and saying, would you like a large, small or medium fries with that meal? Because they were so heavily chastised for being creative. And the problem is the system, whether it's children's education, adult education, qualifications, it's got this academic, retarded academic overview where we're taking responsibility from you, and you should actually think for yourself, just do as we do. And again, a famous saying, again, Einstein said, You can't use the same thought process with the thought process which created the problem in the first place. But this is exactly what we're doing. And in the medical profession and mental health especially, they're seeing the system isn't working. And it's obviously not working. In Stoke-on-Trent, we've got the highest, or one of the highest numbers of young male suicide rates. So something's going wrong. And everybody's scratching their heads and looking around because they won't think, they won't be creative and think outside the box. And when other solutions or potential solutions come along, they feel challenged by it and just shut it all down and say, no, 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 you must do this. And they don't realise they're the cause of the problems. Education, the system is the cause of the problem. Because we're conditioned to think different ways and unbalanced ways, and we need to change this. But that's all a different story and going on a different thing. But I just want to bring that to your attention at the moment. You know, one of the things we do when we go through shadow work is we make people aware of the problems, of why they are the way they are, why they're feeling depressed, why their anxiety levels are so high. You know, people are stressed at work and we're working more and more hours, all in the name of commercialism. Families spend less time together because the shops are open 7 days a week and open till late. We've got Christmas coming up just around the corner, and yet we're going to see families working longer and longer hours. You know, I used to work as a store detective in a big shopping store, and leading up to Christmas they were open till 10 o'clock at night, and really from about 7 o'clock till 10 o'clock at night you probably had about 4 or 5 customers in because nobody's interested. And at the most they may make 50 quid, maybe 100 quid. And yet they've employed 20 staff to be there just in case somebody comes in on a massive shopping spree, which never happens. But these are usually all parents, loved ones, who are out working till late and they're getting worked to death by the system. You know, health and safety has gone stupid, as we know. And again, people cannot be as productive because, again, like in education, there's people sat at the top of the chain who are literally just sat there, who have never done a job or done the job that they're teaching in their lives. It's all based on an academic system, and so they're literally making things up for course content. Oh, let's put this rule into place, let's do this because this will make them do another course which they need to do, and that's all money. It's all about funding, and we're trapped into that system. So it's hardly likely so many people are coming down with mental health issues these days, but we're addressing these mental health issues with the same format and the same problems as what's causing them. And we need to get out of that paradigm, we need to move on. So I'm going to leave the video there, but thank you for watching. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can see my challenge. I am going to be tagging 3 people in that challenge, and when you tag somebody in the challenge it means they've got to go out and do the same. I'm not going to say who they are until I do the challenge myself, and that's what it's all about. But get involved with it, get out there, go and do it yourself. Encourage other people to do it, and I know it's focused on men's mental health, but it's for everybody. People like Sean James from My Self Reliance, Doug Outdoors, Joe Robinette, some great YouTubers. They've all got involved, they're all doing it, and there's many more people. There's many people from the UK I just haven't got round to seeing their videos yet who've got involved with it. It's going big, it's getting viral, so please get on there, look at the links below, see some of the links, and get people involved with it. Let's get this paradigm that we're living in, this negative paradigm where we're not getting any better. People are just trapped, feeling lonely. Let's get that ended. Let's get this sorted, and we can together. If the medical profession can't do it for us, and all these charitable organisations which receive lots of funding and then completely let everybody down because they're too interested in the funding and not what they're about, if they're going to let us down, then who do we go to? Well, we've got to turn to each other. But there are some good organisations out there which can help. You're certainly not alone. So don't feel alone. You might feel very alone, you might feel very isolated. That's part of the overall condition in terms of mental health. It makes you feel vulnerable, but I assure you, you're not vulnerable. Please look out for my next video. We're doing workshops. I've got my colleague Chantel, who's also a shadow healer. So if you are a woman and you're watching this and you'd much rather talk to a female, that's absolutely fine. Chantel's my colleague in this, and we also have other energy healers and supporters who come in. My wife's a big source of inspiration. She does a lot of energy healing and stuff like that, which is all important. We look at things from an holistic point of view, and that's the way it has to be looked at. We can't just focus in on one aspect, deal with that, because if everywhere else there's lots of other little problems, they just drive this problem from being healed. So we're always holistic in the way we do stuff, and that's the only way to really be, and we go as natural as possible. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you.